right, before we talk about neurofeedback, we're going to raise your testosterone. So everybody stand up.
Toi oli hyvä.
Stand up, go ahead. Spread your arms as far apart as you can. Take up as much space as you can. Coordinate with your neighbors so you don't hit each other in the face. You can go capital T like this or in the shape of a V with your arms up. Either one, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. You guys keep holding this, and I'm going to explain to you. This is a power pose, and if you hold this for 2 to 3 minutes, research has proven this to increase your testosterone 20%. And that is significant. So anytime you need to wake up and jumpstart your day, this is something that you can do if you have to speak. I've been doing this backstage for the last 20 minutes. You can do it before a big meeting at work, anything you need to do. So go ahead and sit down, guys. You can relax, and we'll talk about neurofeedback. So one thing I want you to keep in mind as we go through this presentation is our brainwave profile, the things that are going on inside of our brain at any given moment are inseparable from the way that we experience the world. And imagine if you could control that, if you could shape that the way that you wanted to. And that's what we're talking about today. I'm going to share with you an experience that I had recently learning about neurofeedback, traveling to Los Angeles, California, doing some experiments on myself, and we're going to provide you with some tools that you can put in your toolbox to optimize your state on any given day for optimal performance, but also some habits and practices that you can build into your life that you can use to shape and train your brain so that you can have the mental qualities that we all want for a lifetime of high achievement, happiness, success. You're going to learn how your brain waves affect your experiences of the world. Like I said, I'll show you some things that you can do short-term and long-term. And obviously the benefit for you is you get to control your mind. You can dictate your day, your life, whatever, as opposed to it being dictated to you or leaving it to chance. You get to experience increased focus, greater presence, greater sense of awareness, be more productive, and as you'll find out in a few minutes, there's the potential to reduce age-related cognitive decline. So the first question is, how did this come about? Why was I interested in this? I am the host of the Optimal Performance Podcast for Natural Sex, and a few months ago, we had a guest on our show, a neuroscientist, Dr. Andrew Hill. And this is a quote from Dr. Hill on our podcast. After the age of 65, we suffer a 10 to 25% decrease in structural density of our brain mass. Specifically, it's the lateral portions of the frontal lobe, and as you can see, these are the things that are associated with awareness, food, things that if you think about your grandparents, you kind of associate with the aging population, right? So 10 to 25% structural loss, except for one group. There is one demographic, one population who is spared from this post-65 decline. And it's not exercise related, it's not diet related yet. I have a feeling that if we studied people who ate the way that you're hearing at an event like this, or trained, exercised the way that we're talking about at events like this, you would probably see some of this sparing, but people have not been doing that. People over 65 have not been doing that long enough for us to have that data yet. So the population, meditators. Raise your hand if you meditate. Keep your hand up if you meditate multiple times a week. Keep your hand up if you've been doing it for 5 years or more. Okay, so if you meditate multiple times a week and for a lifetime, you will be spared the age-related cognitive decline that Dr. Hill mentioned there. The interesting thing that he said on the podcast was that neurofeedback in as few as 2 to 3 months can provide the same benefit as a lifetime of meditation. So imagine if you can dedicate 12 weeks to get that benefit. That was fascinating to me. So I wanted to learn more. I went to Los Angeles. I had to know what this was about. I wanted to figure out how to do it, what it was, is it really going to work? Am I going to notice these benefits? So that's Dr. Hill. That's me wearing a QEEG helmet. And this is the lab technician. So like I said, went to Los Angeles. Dr. Hill runs Peak Brain Institute, and that's where we did this study. We learned what the brain waves look like inside of my head. I learned why I am the way that I am based on what these brain waves look like. And from there, I've kind of been able to make some changes and get my brain to perform the way I want it to on a daily basis. So quickly, here's a close-up. You can see the helmet. You can see behind me, I'm hooked up to a lot of different computers. There are 2 forms of QEEG. This one that you see here, this is a dry EEG, and that means the electrodes just connect straight to my brain. That is a $25,000 unit. It's basically, it's a Honda or equivalent car on your head. So we use the QEEG as a form of baseline. If you're familiar with EEG, it's electrical encephalogram. It gives you a snapshot of the brain waves of what's going on in your brain at any given moment. The Q, or qualitative part of this, is different. What we do with the brainwave reading is compare your reading to a database of people from your same gender, your same age, and you can see how or where you deviate from the norm. Right? So we use this as a baseline to get a snapshot of where we are. And this is really important. And I think this is one thing that if you only take one thing away from this talk, it would be that there is a process, a growth process that you can apply to any pursuit. This is repeatable, and it applies to anything that you do in life, whether it's fat loss or muscle gain or starting any new habit. The first thing you need to do is establish a baseline. Figure out where you are. If you're here, you already know where you want to go. You know what optimal looks like. You know what the goal is. Figure out where you are. Determine a course of action to move from where you are to where you want to be. And then finally, it's showing up, doing the work. And we're never complete. We're never finished. There's always work to be done as humans to continue to grow and evolve. So the QEEG for us is baseline. And from there, we're able to figure out how we need to train and change my brain, your brain, for optimal performance. So wet versus dry, these are the 2 forms of QEEG. You saw the dry helmet, that's the $25,000 piece of equipment. Despite the fact that it is that expensive, it didn't work. So we had to use the old school wet EEG. She's not stabbing my brain. That is a glycerin wet liquid that she is injecting underneath of those electrodes. The electrodes need the glycerin to establish a connection. So that's why it's called a wet EEG. That's the only difference. It's also a lot cheaper. So we did 2 separate readings. Both readings were conducted first thing in the morning. We did this at 8 a.m., completely fasted, no food, no stimulants, no coffee, no nootropics, nothing. And first reading was done on a Wednesday. The second EEG was done on a Friday, so 48 hours between the two. You can see the readings here on this computer. That's the raw brainwave data coming in from the QEEG. When we're looking at the brainwaves, we could talk at length about brainwaves. Because of time, I'm just going to go quickly through a few of these highlights. Delta brainwaves are associated with sleep. We do not want to see elevated delta brainwaves when we are doing focused work, when we're alert and awake. What we want to see at that time are beta brainwaves. These are what are associated with being engaged in problem solving, what you would normally consider that high-level executive function, right? There are many ways that we can see dysfunction or abnormalities in brainwaves. There are 2 that we're going to highlight here. One is a high alpha to beta ratio, and that is associated with being inattentive, or 20 or 30 years ago, that would be the diagnosis of ADD. The other that we want to highlight is a high theta to beta ratio. That would be associated with impulsive behavior. Or again, 20 or 30 years ago, the diagnosis of ADHD. So going back to our process, the QEEG gives us our baseline. Without knowing what is going on in our head, without seeing those brain waves, anything that we try to do, any change, any biohack or tool that we put in our toolbox, we're kind of just guessing if we don't know where we're starting, right? So it's very important to have this data and make sure that you're getting the most out of your efforts, that they're actually doing something for you that you want them to do and moving you in the right direction. So these are my results. This is day 1. This is Wednesday. Control. There's no stimulants, no food, no nothing. The first 2 columns on the left, the red that you see is noise from muscle tension. So you can ignore that. What we want to focus on is this middle column here. And if you look at the one in the dead center, you will see some elevated activity. What you're seeing there are alpha brain waves, and they are, in my head, I am 2 to 3 standard deviations higher than the norm. And then if you look on the right, you'll see beta, and I'm actually fairly low to neutral. So my ratio of alpha to beta was higher than we would like it to be. So if we were looking at this from a diagnosis standpoint, we would say that I could suffer from an inattentive mind. I think quickly. I move from one topic to the other. Again, ADD, right? This was what Dr. Hill said. This is very interesting and something definitely worth sharing. That ADD is only pathology if we force you to sit in a chair for 8 to 10 hours. So this is not to say that there is something wrong with me as an individual. This is just to say this is what my brain waves look like. So if you know what's going on in your head, you can structure your days or your workload or your life. You can design it to work for you. We went back on Friday, did a second reading. The second reading was with Ciltep. This is our flagship nootropic. If you're not familiar with it, we can talk about it at length afterwards. Come find me. But since we were there and since we were doing this, we wanted to see if taking Ciltep elicited a measurable change in my brainwaves. And you can see this is different clothes. It's on Friday. Now we'll compare. On the left, that's Wednesday. On the right is Friday. So again, we're looking at the middle column here, and what you'll notice is alpha brain waves have been reduced 1 or 2 standard deviations, and this is with a single dose of CILTEP. It's not even the full dose, it's 1 pill. So this was really exciting for us as a company. It was really exciting for Dr. Hill as a neuroscientist and a neurofeedback practitioner, and we will be pursuing some pilot studies with Dr. Hill for applications of CILTEP using EEG and neurofeedback. So that's all to come, but the really important thing here is that a single dose of CILTEP provided the same results that we would usually see with 2 to 3 months of focused neurofeedback training. So neurofeedback is what we would do after the QEEG. So we know, for me specifically, that I have high alpha brainwave levels, low beta, and we want to bring those into balance. So the neurofeedback planned for me would be to achieve that result. Higher beta wave production, lower alpha production. But that's specific to me. So anybody who does neurofeedback training would need that initial baseline reading to know how the neurofeedback would be beneficial to them or to you. So neurofeedback is kind of this like unicorn thing in the biohacking world. It seems to be elusive for a lot of people to understand and benefit from. One of the reasons for this is that you have no control over it. You're not actively doing something. We love biohacks where we can go do something and immediately see the result. With neurofeedback, it's happening in the background. You are telling your brain, yes, we like what you're doing, or no, we don't. The feedback is either a pat on the back or a slap on the wrist. So it may help to understand that if you see this slide. This is me doing a neurofeedback session. So I am looking at this screen. I have all the electrodes hooked up to my earlobes, and there's one on my head. The spaceship on the computer screen goes when my brain is producing brain waves that are conducive to the profile that we want. So again, for me, high alpha, or it's lowering alpha and raising beta. So when my brain does that, the spaceship goes. That's the pat on the back saying we like that. If my brain strays from that environment, the screen goes black, the spaceship crashes, it stops going. So that's the feedback, that's the slap on the wrist. I am not actively steering that spaceship. It's not a game, it's not something I do. So neurofeedback is not this thing that we are active participants in. It's just something that you have to commit to doing, you hook yourself up to it, and you do it. If you do that, as we said, 2 to 3 months of that training can provide the same benefit as a lifetime of meditation. So like I said, follow-up pilot studies are underway, and we also have 2 university studies underway with CILTEP to look at how it boosts focus and memory as well. So quickly, because time is running out, other applications. So right now, we've only looked at this from the standpoint of normal people trying to get better, right? So we would call that an optimizer or a biohacker. Some other applications for non-optimizers, TBI, people with traumatic brain injury. The ability to recover from that is greatly, there's a huge positive impact using neurofeedback. CTE, basically you've had a lot of concussions, it's chronic traumatic encephalopathy. In the NFL or rugby or football, There are impact concussions, where one part of your brain smashes against either a helmet or your skull. In the military or law enforcement, we see different types of concussions. There's a percussion blast, where that blast wave travels through your entire skull. Both of those types of concussions can see positive benefit from neurofeedback training, as well as sleep. Any kids, if we want to increase focus, if we want to look at this as an alternative to ADD or ADHD medications. So how can you apply this? Again, think back to our process. For me, it was getting the QEEG, and like I said, high alpha, low beta, we want to bring those back into a favorable balance. So for me, it was training down alpha, and on a daily basis, doing things like taking CILTEP, working on meditation, yoga, neurofeedback, and finally, we want to look at things in a sense of states versus traits. So states are going to be short-term, transient things. How are you? Today is Friday. What is your brain like on today, Friday, Thursday, or next Monday? Traits are the qualities of your brain. So if you think of Southern California or Florida, you generally think of a place that's warm and sunny. That's the climate. Yes, it rains there, but more often than not, it's sunny and warm. So for you, for all of us in our brains, we can look at nootropics as a way to enhance and optimize our state on any given day. And quickly for that, I would recommend something called the Braverman test as a baseline there. And again, the goal is to figure out your baseline, chart a course of action that brings you into this favorable balance. Being able to manipulate your state on a given day, whether it's with nootropics, power poses, the food that you eat, these are all biohacks because we are changing what's going on in our body to optimize our output. So with traits, these are the qualities of our brain, and that requires a lifetime, a commitment to habits and practices. For me, again, looking at things that reduce that alpha to beta ratio. For me, it's meditation, using neurofeedback, yoga. If yoga is something that you're going to do, find whatever form works for you, vinyasa, Bikram, Kundalini, whatever. HoloSync is another tool that you can put in your toolbox. Bill Harris is the creator of this, and calls it meditation on steroids. Briefly looking at it again, short term, you're looking at nootropics or other like power poses. Use the Braverman for that as you're finding your baseline. Long term, things like QEEG to get your baseline, and then neurofeedback, yoga, meditation, HoloSync. Whatever you're doing, make sure that you're coming back to that baseline test and retesting at particular intervals so that you can make sure that you are making progress, that you're moving closer to that goal that you're chasing. With QEEG, probably 3 to 4 times a year is the right interval to check in with that. If you guys have any questions, we'll do Q&A now. You can also email me, ryan@naturalstacks.com. So.
Give a hand to Ryan Munsey. Yes, and time for some questions. Anybody has any questions?
Yeah.
The neurofeedback that you did in Los Angeles, was it $25,000 to do, or was the device?
No, it's not $25,000 to do it. Just that hardware costs $25,000. That helmet. There are ways to do it if you don't live in an area that has it. So, like, I don't live in Los Angeles, so I went and visited, and I did a 3-day. We did baselines, and then they set me up with at-home equipment that's considerably less than that. It's still an investment, but it's less than that. And they train you how to do it at home, and you're actually connected to them. So, you know, it's like an online training for your brain, and they can see my results, and they program the neurofeedback training sessions for the first, or for that interval until I can go back and see them again, whether it's 2 months, 3 months, whatever. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. Do you know about any experience on people that fall into trance? For example, like the animis or the Cuban babalaos or something. Have you studied what happens in the trance in the EEG or in your system? Because there are other studies, but I would like to know whether you are aware of what happens for those, because you have also got those Cuban babalaos and the West African animis there in the United States.
I only caught part of that. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, do you have any evidence by using that equipment about trance, the states of trance?
The state of trance?
Falling into trance, like in the animistic religious states where you fall in trance, or like the Cuban priests, Afro-Cuban priests, or
Right.
West African animis when they fall into the status of trance.
I'm sure somebody has tried to get readings on that. I don't have any. I haven't seen it, but doesn't mean it's not out there.
Okay, thank you.
Hey Ryan, thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. You mentioned actually that the EEG headband, the expensive one, didn't really work, so that's why you had to go to the wet EEG. What were the limitations, or how can we probably get something like this at home in the near future?
Yeah, so it is limited. The limitation is having access to the hardware. So you would have to find an EEG facility around you. Dr. Hill and Peak Brain are kind of pioneers in setting up distance neurofeedback training, like I explained in the first answer. But you can only do that if you get the initial reading, which you would have to go to them to do. You don't necessarily have to go to them or go to LA. You could probably go get EEG done anywhere. I would just say get on the internet and look for an EEG or QEEG practitioner. There's usually one or two in every city. They may just not be marketing to the public. Most of their applications to this point have been for what we would call non-optimizers. So if you're not like, if you're healthy, you may not be aware of them, right? So, you know, if you have $25,000 and you want to buy one and have it at home, you could, but you would still have to do the neurofeedback. You know, the QEEG just gives you the scan and the reading. And neurofeedback, there's tons of personal and at-home things that you can get for, I mean, there's some that are as low as $200 or $300. The problem there is that the program isn't designed for you, and it's not designed by a neuroscientist with your baseline reading in mind. There's also question as to the effectiveness of the connection. You know, you're paying $200 for an at-home unit. The top of the line costs $25,000. So how much drop-off do we have in, you know, data collection? So.
For last question. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a general question about nootropics.
Okay.
It seems like these drugs haven't been researched much, and I was wondering about potential adverse effects. For example, if we compare it to cocaine, it used to be widely used for stimulant, and only later people discovered some adverse effects. So isn't it risky to sell these drugs to people, considering that we might find out some adverse effects later, like happened with cocaine?
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue that, but none of the products that we manufacture are synthetic. Everything that's in our products are natural, have been around for years, and actually have studies to support their effectiveness. When I say we're conducting studies on ours, it's as a formula for this specific use and purpose. There are previous studies done prior to manufacturing of this supplement. So I can only speak for ours. I can't speak for others.
All right, how a big hand for Mr. Ryan Muncy. You can also find him online. He has a great podcast. So Optimal Performance, go check him out.
Thank you.
And great to have you here in Helsinki, man.
Yeah, thank you.